welcome to the Epic Web3 podcast. I'm Alex, CEO and co-founder of Epic Web3, and today I am with Harrison from Fleek and Parsa and Dalton. Harrison is CEO and co-founder of Fleek, right? And Parsa and Dalton are software engineers, protocol devs, right? Welcome,
co-founders of
guys.
Fleek Network as well. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Welcome, guys. Welcome to the show. Why don't you just start with briefly describing what Fleek is today? Because there is Fleek, there's Fleek Network, there are a bunch of information on your website. So maybe you can briefly describe what you are doing.
Sure. So basically, Fleek itself and what it's been known for is kind of more so like a Web3 development platform. We're very popular for things like front-end hosting. Like we host a lot of the apps in the space with IPFS hosting, things like ENS domains and features like that. But what our main focus has been for the last sort of 2 years and what really ends up playing a really big role in the Fleek platform is Fleek Network. And that's a decentralized edge platform. So essentially, if you look at the modern web and a lot of the infrastructure apps today use, a lot of it is moving in this more sort of edge, Next.js, serverless direction. And so Fleek Network is essentially a protocol that's designed in a specific way to just maximally optimize for high performance and low latency. Because what we've seen building Fleek over the years, and especially being real deep, we were some of the biggest builders on top of IPFS, Filecoin, the Internet Computer, a lot of these other decentralized web protocols. We were one of the largest builders in some of these early other decentralized web infrastructure ecosystems, IPFS, Filecoin, the Internet Computer, etc. And we just sort of noticed that almost every Web3 protocol still needs Web2 augmentation to reach the performance levels that developers and users kind of demand. And so that's where we really saw a gap in the Web3 infrastructure stack. And with the way Web3 was trending with modular and sort of breaking up monolithic, and there was a lot of these smart ideas for scaling and performance gains on the smart contract side of the ecosystem, but it lagged on the decentralized web infrastructure side of the ecosystem. But once we started seeing technologies like Narwhal and Bullshark and some of these off-chain compute approaches to building new protocols, we felt that it was finally possible where you could build a network and optimize it for but that's when we kind of decided that we thought it was possible that you could build a network that potentially could achieve Web 2 performance without needing to rely on Web 2 sort of CDNs or lambdas or things like that to achieve it. We now felt, it was possible to potentially showcase that, with these new breakthroughs and technologies, that it was possible to, build something like this that maybe, had the possibility to perform to the level of Web 2 and platforms like, a Cloudflare or an AWS. But, then as we started building, we sort of thought that, similar to a Uber or Airbnb and some of these kind of like centralized physical infrastructure networks, sometimes when you decentralize the supply side of these networks, you can reach even greater performance than before. And so whereas a lot of protocols try to leverage decentralization as like a security advantage, what we're really trying to do is leverage decentralization as a performance advantage, where we think it's possible that maybe we could not only achieve Web 2 performance, but in certain use cases or geographies, maybe even outperform Web 2. And so that's really what we're focused on. So really just the types of products and services you would really think to build on Fleek Network are more in the web edge service middleware side of things. So maybe not so much financial applications, but you could think about a lot of the infrastructure needed for those financial applications, whether it's running nodes for some of these networks or, AVSs or rollups or different things. A lot of the supporting infrastructure for these things, sequencers, provers. Now that the data availability cost is sort of solved, the next big problem to solve is like cost for running these provers and other infrastructure. And so that's where we feel if Fleek Network can come in and provide a new infrastructure option that is very high performance, lower cost than Web 2, that a lot of these aspects of Web 3 that currently sit on cloud platforms, whether it's simple CDN usage sticking in front of your RPC or your network, or Lambda functions, or the nodes for some of these middleware networks or other networks. That's really where we think in a lot of circumstances, Fleek Network could be a good option, where you get a lot of the edge optimization and infrastructure out of the box. So whereas maybe with EigenLayer you can rent economic security, we sort of view Fleek Network as a platform where you could rent like really highly available, edge optimized, performant, cost effective, sort of infrastructure. And that is applicable not only to Web 3, but also to Web 2, because everyone's using Lambda functions, everyone's using Next.js. A lot of these components that are perfectly suited for like use cases for an edge network, they apply to, not only the Web3 devs, but also sort of just the broader just web development community. And that's really kind of where we're focused, is, not really just leaning on decentralization as what makes us sort of differentiated, but really we think that, kind of like what you're seeing with Helium and Helium Mobile, that, we think we can compete more on just cost and performance with some of the just incumbent cloud players, and potentially, just kind of win on performance, cost, as well as all the Web3 sort of cryptographic guarantees and permissionlessness and sort of those benefits that, none of the corporate nonsense, in a sense.
Is it so you mentioned that you are going to even outperform some Web 2 solutions. So is it already happening, or are these only your plans? So in terms of speed, in terms of costs?
Yeah, so in the last testnet phase we ran, we did show that Fleek Network has the potential to outperform Web 2. We just did a simple test. We open sourced the testing script, so anyone who wanted to reproduce the results could easily do it. But basically, we just ran a simple edge function, because that was what we were kind of showcasing functionality-wise in the last testnet. And we ran it on Fleek Network, on AWS, and on Vercel, which is kind of like Lambda with a CDN in front of it. So it gives you a little bit better performance. And we were able to show that we were substantially faster than both in a simple test where, we were calling the function from several different geographic locations, a bunch of times, and just seeing the average response time in both cold start situations and also just cached response situations. However, being able to do that in a simple test is a lot different than being able to do it at AWS and Vercel scale. And so what that test showed is we have the potential to do it. A lot of the remaining work is, how do we do it at scale? But, I think we're on the right path. And I think similar to how you've seen kind of networks like Solana or, Ethereum just improve a lot over time, in terms of performance. I think, that, now we've proven it's possible. Now it's just about sort of execution at scale. Yeah.
So basically, your potential clients are not only Web3 companies, but they can also be traditional Web 2 companies, which just want to have a faster hosting, faster infrastructure, cheaper infrastructure. So potentially, it's not only about decentralization, right? It's also about the performance.
That's 100% correct. Because basically the benefits we think Fleek Network provides are not Web3 or Web 2 developer specific. If we can provide the most performant edge functions, or, the higher performance, lower cost Next.js app hosting, or any of these use cases where Fleek Network can demonstrate that it's better performing and a lower cost option than existing cloud platforms, that's really the market we're going after. And definitely Web3 is the market we'll start with, just because, that's kind of where our bread and butter is with our customer base and usage today. So a lot of the first services you'll see, at least the Fleek team build on top of Fleek Network, are, things very relevant to the platform around IPFS pinning or IPNS, keys, or just CDN or Edge function or Next.js app hosting. But, different groups could take, the services and applications they build on the network in completely different directions. We have people experimenting with building, things like ZK TLS or ZK provers on the network and stuff like that. And so, basically we just kind of, you might see a shift a little bit with the Fleek platform and branding to, not be so Web3 specific, just because if you're a Web2 dev and you come to the Fleek website today, you probably will think you're in the wrong place, because it's talking about IPFS and ENS and decentralization. And so, we don't want to alienate those developers. We just want to basically be able to explain that Fleek Network is a very high performant, low cost, and no corporate nonsense cloud platform and infrastructure that fits very well for, pretty much anyone using this type of infrastructure, which most modern developers and applications are. And we even think AI agents are going to like Fleek Network a lot as well.
Yeah, I think today this Web3 and Web2 worlds kind of separate, and it's really hard for Web2 developers to understand what's going on when they are in the Web3 space. So that's probably there will probably be a hard job to explain to different segments what you do, but yeah. And so am I right that the main product you're focusing on right now is Fleek Network, right? So you have, I don't know, you have two products, right? So you have
Yeah.
previous version of Fleek.
I guess like we have Fleek Network, that's the main uh, product, and we help with the core development. But with the Fleek platform, that's really just like to make it easier to use the network and the services built on the network. So, but it's not too dissimilar. If you look at any modern cloud platform like a Netlify or Vercel or, Fly.io or any, it's kind of, you have the infrastructure layer underneath, which a lot of these edge platforms today, they just build their edge networks on top of AWS. They'll just set up in a bunch of different AWS data center locations. And so they'll run an edge network on top of AWS, basically. And it's easier to set that up, but you're limited in terms of your coverage. So that's why most of those Web2 edge networks, have sub 100 node coverage, because eventually you kind of reach this performance cost trade-off that no longer makes sense. And, that's sort of where decentralizing the supply side on something like this can potentially like really be beneficial is, we expect, and even in the last, public test nets we've done showcase, an order of magnitude higher node count than existing edge networks. And so, that's part of the reason, we think from a performance perspective, we might be able to showcase, better performance potentially than Web 2. But on the cost side, especially, 75 to 80% of IT costs are human attributed things. And so when you kind of instead run a system algorithmically like Uber and you cut that human bloat, and you don't have to hire people to go set up all this infrastructure in cars and deal with the different jurisdictional restrictions of setting up infrastructure. So it's like it's economically unfeasible for Web 2 to like be a real edge computing network with thousands of locations, because to coordinate that and manage that would just be very economically unfeasible. But so that's really where we think on the infrastructure side we might have an advantage. But if you look at Vercel and some of these modern platforms, infrastructure alone is not what allowed them to steal market share from the incumbents. It was a really seamless UI and developer experience. So that's really where the platform and distribution for Fleek Network, we're taking a much more product focused like distribution plan, where the idea would be to just make it super easy to leverage the functionality of the network so that anybody, who wants to build with these functionalities or infrastructure could just do so, and the experience would not be any different from like using Vercel or AWS or Cloudflare or any of these other platforms. And really, just focus on the cost and performance advantages and, the sort of lack of corporate nonsense advantage we have.
So Fleek Network is in a testnet phase right now. I think when I was preparing to this pod, I listened to one of your interviews about a year ago, and you mentioned that you were planning to launch a mainnet in the middle of 2023. So I assume it turned out to be a little bit longer way, probably harder to go to the main net. Can you tell about this process a bit?
Yeah, and maybe I'll let either Dalton or Parsa if you guys want to explain. But basically, the delay was we actually started as a decentralized CDN.
Yeah.
And then we realized that a lot of the hard problems we were solving to build a CDN, we could essentially like just build a much more general purpose network and apply those same sort of core primitives around just making everything very low latency, high performance optimized to a lot more use cases, and not just put all of our eggs in the basket of CDN and bandwidth, which have much tighter margins and much less like room for error. Whereas the compute side is a much larger market and kind of a lot more margins on compute than bandwidth. So from a strategic perspective, it lowered the risk of an endeavor like this several orders of magnitude, I would say, and also just expanded the total addressable market of the things that you could potentially do and build on Fleek Network. And so, that was a worthwhile trade-off to delay and sort of, go after this much larger vision. But I'd say Dalton or Parsa, if you want to just give an update on sort of where we're at and kind of the next sort of 3-6 rest of the year, that feel free.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just to piggyback on the last question is the last summer we did a complete rewrite. That's why we didn't go to mainnet. We had a cool little working protocol, but we just looked at it and we were just like, we could do more. And we kind of started fresh. We kept what was good and moved on. But in the next few months, we do have the next testnet will be out at the end of April. And this is going to be kind of the long-running testnet. The last few were short, contained testnet experiences where we were showcasing something. We did the serverless functions, and we're testing different things. And then end of April, we'll have a few useful POCs to go alongside of the long-term testnet. And then this testnet will be long-running until we go to mainnet. And as this testnet goes on, we'll keep adding more services for people to use. One of the main ones we're hitting first is a decentralized Next.js stack that you can take your Next.js front end and get your serverless functions and everything on our edge instead of Vercel.
Yeah. So, and can you explain for those who didn't go through this process yet? So how? What is the purpose of testnet, and what are the main things you need to consider when launching a mainnet? Why don't launch a mainnet right away? So just maybe a couple of advice for those who are not in that phase yet, but are going to launch it soon.
I think one of the main reasons for these past few testnets was more for especially in a network like us where we really care about performance. We want everything to be as quick as possible. So it was to figure out where our bottlenecks are. These were alpha testnets where we were testing systems that have only been tested on our servers. So we open up the gates, let a bunch of people in, figure out what's underperforming, figure out what's working well. As our reputation algorithm doing what it's supposed to do? Is consensus as quick as it's supposed to be? And then we kind of take these results, go back to the drawing board, fix what wasn't working, keep what was, and that's kind of how we treated these past few test nets. Now we're a bit more stable, and these next ones are going to be more about getting useful stuff to people and showing people like, hey, like this is what we enable, and that's kind of the going forward. There'd be more of a what most people would consider a test net, like something to use, test products on, and things like that.
Yeah. And are you now actively onboarding new developers or node operators or somebody else?
Yeah, we do have we have a team leading node onboarding, and we're locking in specs, finding groups that are good for the test net. So there will be a whitelisted in this next test net. We're not going to just open the gates where anyone can run a node, which that will eventually be the case. We are working. Harrison mentioned before, with a few people that want to build really cool stuff on us. So we're working closely with someone who's doing some ZK TLS. There should be an announcement on that with a little more information soon. We're exploring some ZK prover stuff with other teams, but that's mainly more who we're working with at this stage, is people that have products that would be perfectly suited for our network, and we're just helping them, making sure we're providing what they would need. And yeah, and the other thing is that why this network is real easy for us to build is because the Fleek platform uses tons of edge services, CDNs, all this stuff. So we ourselves are the first customer for this. We're building what we need to replace our backends with this network. So we've just been kind of taking that approach with a few other projects as well.
Can somebody of you share maybe the best practices, what works for you in terms of bringing more devs, more projects, more products to your infrastructure?
I think, to be honest, we've done a poor job at it to date. The Fleek platform is great because it's self-service. So, anyone who wants to host a site, that's part of the beauty of it. Like, we don't have to talk to you. You could go, you could use the platform. It's pretty easy to figure out. And devs like that. But on Fleek Network, it's brand new. And even us ourselves, just the nomenclature, like, how do you describe this? How should developers think about this? Are they going to think it's like a smart contract? Are they going to think it's like a microservice? Is it a roll up? It's like, there's a lot of just like, how do we make this very easy to digest? And part of it is you get caught up in all this Web3, buzzword nonsense. And I think what we've learned is let's just, stay away from that and just really speak to developers in the language they understand, and move away from any of this hype or buzzword jargon that doesn't make sense or add value. So that, yeah, we really, I think I haven't seen really a Web3 protocol that's really been able to cross the bridge into like the Web 2 and open source community. I think AI is starting to change that a little bit, but yeah, the first few protocols who crack that nut are definitely going to be in a very advantageous position. And, I think some of the mistakes I've seen other Web3 protocols make is a little bit on just like, being pretty unfriendly to anyone outside of Web3 who, maybe isn't interested in an airdrop or running a node and needing to download a new wallet or something to just leverage your new, decentralized compute or whatever type of product you're trying to get them to use. Those barriers should be as low as possible, and that experience should be as familiar as possible, and just compete on merit. And that's our plan. And sort of, yeah, I think you'll start to see in the next few weeks us start to do a much better job of explaining what Fleek Network is, what type of services you could build on Fleek Network, and really how Fleek Network adds a lot of value to existing protocols and technologies in the ecosystem. Because like I said, all these rollups, all these AVSs, a lot of the nodes for these networks, they're running on AWS. And, it's like, so we're not really competing with other Web3 protocols. We're just going after the parts of their protocols that currently sit on cloud platforms and saying, hey, for a lot of these use cases, rather than rolling your own network or needing to build and maintain your own node software, you could potentially build this on Fleek Network and get a lot of this out of the box and not need to worry about this. And you'll save a lot of cost. You'll get to market much quicker. And, that's what I think we'll start to demonstrate over the next few weeks. But yeah, that's our plan, is just educate developers, and show them and build a better product. I think if we build a better infrastructure platform that really is more performant and lower cost, that it'll find a lot of use and value to developers. So that's our main focus. But yeah, we gotta inform people better about what we're building and how to use it and what it is. So that's our main focus for the next month or so.
But speaking about the end game, so do you think your main goal is to onboard like the whole Web3 ecosystem, or you think it's more important to go, let's say, to mainstream or normie world where traditional Web2 apps will be hosted at Fleek Network?
Yeah, that's the dream. Is like we want to have an impact on the web in general. Like Fleek Network, we think can legitimately make the web faster. And so like this, we only hit our goals if like a dream is like once Vercel realizes they'd benefit from using Fleek Network instead of AWS. Like that's like where we want to get to, where we could build an infrastructure option where the biggest players in Web 2 find value and say yes, this makes sense as an infrastructure option to house my software, or to host it, and yes, it could be for different reasons. Maybe the permissionlessness and the sort of no deplatforming side of decentralized networks is interesting to a certain DeFi use case or what have you. But yeah, no, more so we like the vision is we are the most performant, lowest, best performance period. And so that's what we hope and think we will prove out over these next few years. And that, yeah, by the end of the decade, we think building any meaningful software on corporate controlled cloud platforms is going to sound silly. It's like it's a decade behind banks and smart contract platforms, but all the inherent risks are the same. And so keeping your data in something corporate controlled where, the rules could be changed if, sort of where the world is going and the importance of digital data and information and compute and everything, and the legislation starting to be passed around, the TikTok ban and things that really are going to put pressure, a lot more pressure on centralized cloud platforms and hosting platforms. We think like, yeah, decentralized infrastructure is going to have a moment. And yeah, by the end of this decade, I wouldn't be surprised if, you see some examples similar to like Uniswap and DEXs surpassing SEXs, but on the, sort of decentralized infrastructure platform and certain use cases or verticals of web infrastructure on decentralized platforms surpassing centralized cloud platforms. And yeah, we think, we could be one of the platforms that hopefully achieves that.
Okay, another question. So, I assume you have some plans on launching a token, right? Tell us more about it. So, why do you need a token in the first place in terms of, I don't know, utility and something else?
So Fleek is technically like its own, sort of it's technically an Ethereum sidechain, but it's its own network. But really the token is just like it's very much like a taxi medallion. Like to be an operator on the network, to be honest, we've still gone back and forth on, our own token versus going in, the sort of renting security from Ethereum or something else direction. I'm not exactly sure which route is better, but we just feel that to start, at least the native token route is proven. And before Fleek, I was the founder of Token Foundry, which was kind of like the token arm of Consensus back in the ICO days. So I've thought about token models for a while. I've thought about good ways to launch networks and distribute tokens and structure the supply and things. So I feel like we have the right kind of folks involved and thought process to design a good token model, but it's only on the node side of things. Developers will never need, if they don't want to know about or see or touch FLK, like the Fleek token. It's all services on the network are priced in USDC or another stable coin that the network approves. And basically, yeah, like you don't have to do any mental gymnastics to figure out what the cost is. You could just say, okay, here's the cost of a bandwidth on Fleek, and here's what it costs on Vercel, and here's what it costs on Cloudflare, or here's how much serverless functions cost. Just to make it, like I said, we're trying to lower every barrier, so that if we are able to achieve better performance and lower cost, nothing else can be the reason it doesn't succeed. So the token is really just to secure the network, but like I said, like, we ourselves have explored other, economic security options for the network, whether for ourselves, like the network as a whole of Fleek Network, or for the services built on top of the network. So in the next few weeks, we might try to demonstrate, how, an eigenlayer AVS would be able to leverage Fleek Network for their node infrastructure rather than build their own node software and deal with managing and DevOps. And so that's valuable to the AVS developers, because you could get to market much quicker, but also for the node operators, because, for a lot of these nodes, you have to rent servers to run them on cloud platforms. Whereas with Fleek Network, for certain use cases, you might be able to switch to like running the nodes on Fleek Network, doing usage-based pricing, and getting much better economics for the same nodes you're already running, or that you might run in the future as AVSs, or roll-ups, or whatever else it might be. So yeah, that's kind of the plan.
So unlike many other Web3 protocols, Web3 companies, you're planning to actually earn money from more traditional business models, like getting getting revenue from your clients. Because we just had a podcast with Polygon, for example, and we were discussing there that's Polygon is building a lot of things open source and kind of don't care about value accrual, revenue accrual so far, and they're like more focusing on growing the whole ecosystem. So I assume your approach is more traditional in terms of getting profitable as a business at least at some point, right? So could you share your plans here?
Yeah, so actually one of the goals, especially on the sort of people in the ecosystem, focusing on the node side of things, is one of our goals is to have the highest profitability per node in the network. So, some of these other networks, they really try to just blow open the supply side so they can claim, we have this much capacity and this much, and then 99% of it goes unused, and they're just paying nodes for nothing. We are planning to scale a lot more like a traditional cloud platform would, where we will have a certain number of nodes to begin, based on a certain capacity and geographic coverage the network would like to have to start with, to achieve certain performance and capacity, starting levels, and also with some over capacity to handle DDoS attacks. Fleek Network's great for DDoS attacks, one of the best networks to handle DDoS attacks, given how many nodes and IPs we could spread it across. There's a lot of networks struggling with DDoS attacks. That's another great use case. But yeah, the idea would be, like, to really try to match capacity of the network to usage. So you can have these really productive nodes and not overscale until the usage determines, you should scale to that number of nodes. And so that is the approach we're sort of taking there. But yeah, what else is cool is, because we have like the Fleek platform, it's kind of like when, Telegram has the ton, like their blockchain, and they have an existing user base they can bring over. The Fleek platform has been around for several years. It, is very well loved by the Web3 community. We've got probably 60,000 plus apps or sites hosted on Fleek already. And when the network launches, like all the CDN traffic that's currently on Cloudflare, like we're not going to rush it and throw production sites over there and, just pray that it, is reliable day one. But we will start to, use, Fleek Network CDN, but fall back to our existing CDN infrastructure in the event of any, lack of performance or response. on the edge compute side, same thing. We use a lot of Lambdas in our infrastructure. So even just with the existing Fleek platform usage and the 50 or 60,000 sites and apps hosted on Fleek, yeah, we have a lot of initial usage that, currently goes to AWS and Cloudflare that will just immediately go to the network, and, from day one, and just gradually we would move more of our infrastructure and usage over there as we felt comfortable, but always with the fallbacks until, we were 100% confident we didn't need it anymore. But that centralized infrastructure fallback is already built, so we might as well leverage it for the time being. So this way we still put customer site reliability first, but we're able to already start leveraging the performance and cost benefits of the network as early as, like 2 months from now. And so, yeah, that's sort of the game plan. But yeah, I think, compared to some of the usage, some of these other existing, pretty like big hyped protocols on the decentralized web infrastructure side of things, I think even just with the initial usage we're going to bring onto Fleek Network from the Fleek platform, that's, already, going to put it in a category of some of the highest usage of a decentralized web infrastructure protocol. But we also have these other use cases we're working on kind of outside the sort of functionality of the Fleek platform, like the ZK Prover, the ZK TLS, those kinds of things that just open up all sorts of new, sort of revenue opportunities and earning opportunities for the network for use cases that might not necessarily fit into like the Fleek platform and sort of more traditional web and app development. So yeah, so definitely, the goal is, yeah, like really try to drive usage and growth of this network.
Do you think you're going to raise more money during this cycle? Because I suppose your last funding round was in 2022 when the market conditions were not so good. Do you think you will be raising anytime soon at higher valuations, or what are your plans here?
Yeah, well, we announced that raise in late 2022. I think like a few days before the FTX collapse, but we we did that deal like a lot earlier. We just announced it kind of late.
Okay.
But we are sort of evaluating options moving forward. I think, you know, like I think it's possible, yeah. But in what form that takes, whether the Fleek Foundation decides to do a public token sale or, something like that, or, how it's structured, I'm not really sure. But yeah, we're being very thoughtful with the token distribution, or, the foundation is. And I think, that's one of the benefits Fleek Network is going to end up having over some other networks is, we don't have many, like the foundation hasn't sold many tokens. There's not a lot of, huge VC ownership in Fleek Network. It's pretty community aligned, and it would be cool if we could find more ways to, to go further in that direction between now and mainnet. So yeah, it's sort of, yeah.
Yeah, that would be interesting to watch which strategy you will choose. Okay, so I think I asked most of the questions about Fleek itself. So maybe I didn't ask something you would like to tell, because I have a couple of more questions about the market in general. So I don't
Maybe
know
we just
if
ask
there's
like
some.
Cartha or something. Like, what's the most interesting future or something? Yeah, they're pretty giga, so I want to make sure they get a chance to chat. Yeah.
Yeah, guys, I don't know. So maybe you because I don't know. Maybe I didn't ask something important.
Parsa,
Uh,
what's the Fleek Network use case you're most excited about?
yeah, good question.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. But for me personally, it's right now performance video streaming, and like what we have here is out of reach of like many of the traditional cloud infrastructures when it comes to like the volume of the nodes they can have like close to the users, and like how much closer to the users do you want to get, how far on the edge you want to be. And that kind of makes a very perfect case for at least video streaming, or like just our CDN alone as a layer of object storage uh, performance optimization. That something I'm practically rooting for like in future. But besides that, I think it's like just keeping a very modular design in the whole network, and like keeping the functionalities we provide to user just small enough but still capable of incorporating each other, and like kind of recreating the Unix design philosophies in a way, like in a decentralized network, to let the users like make whatever they want, like out of these little things that just work nicely together. Like that's gonna be like, I guess, my answer here for that.
That was good. Dalton, what about you?
I agree with what Parsa just said a lot. I think what I guess I'm most excited about, I was thinking about this when you were asking about onboarding new developers. I think I'm excited to just be at a place where like it's when you think of onboarding a developer to your protocol, we have this idea because all these protocols have domain specific languages or rules that you have to follow, or they're running in a VM. So it's like, oh, you can bring your code over, but it can't be doing this, it can't be doing that. And I'm excited to get the network into a spot where we can just go to developers and other projects and be like, hey, that exact thing you're running over here, just come run it over here for cheaper. And you don't really have to do much else. I want to get the UX to that level where onboarding's easy. You just offer them a better, cheaper solution and tell them to bring it over. And I want to get to there with our network, and that's kind of what I'm excited about.
Good, good. What are you guys mostly bullish on during this cycle? Narratives drives you?
That's a good question. I mean, it seems like memes are definitely going to play a big role in this bull cycle, whether people like it or not. But I do think this cycle, like decentralized infrastructure, is going to be a big narrative. I think there's a lot of tailwinds behind it, regulatory, supply, that cost. There's real motivation now for better infrastructure solutions. AI especially, I think, is exacerbating and accelerating the trend. But I think, I think what's holding back decentralized infrastructure is performance, first and foremost, which we think Fleek Network can now bring to not just Fleek Network, but to every other protocol. We can actually, any GPU network, you still want it performant, you could use Fleek Network in front of that. So, Fleek Network might end up, like, the majority use cases for Fleek Network might not necessarily to build, entire solutions on top of, versus using it for partial part of your infrastructure, or augmenting your, infrastructure or protocol, or, something sitting elsewhere. So yeah, I think decentralized infrastructure for sure is going to have its moment. And I do think Bitcoin is in, sort of the ecosystem popping up in terms of people building on top of Bitcoin. It looks like they've got a lot of momentum. And so it's kind of, yeah, I think it's cool to see. I mean, I kind of came up with Ethereum and consensus, but I think it's cool that people in Bitcoin are experimenting. But yeah, I could see that narrative being pretty big this cycle too.
What do you think will bring us to the mass adoption? I don't know what dApps are you?
Well, Shane, I know Shane is a buddy of mine from years back, but I think Polymarket, with the election and a lot of the nonsense going on in the world, I think prediction markets are going to have, I agree, they're going to have a big year. And I think he's built a really great product. And I think, that could be, if I had to bet on one app, like That would be my bet.
What do you think, guys?
I don't really know. I'm usually bad at predicting what's the next big thing in the bull market. Yeah, I am very bullish on this economic model that this protocol I found on Blast Baseline. Very, very reminds me of the old bull market. They have this token called Yes. I just like the economic model. I'm excited to see how some of this plays out. I like when the market gets better, we get some of the meme markets back. But on a more serious note, I am excited to see how some of these storylines play out that we've been in the space, like DAs, data availability layers, and everything like that. I think there's a lot of talk that they were building in the bear market, and now a lot of products are coming out. So I'm excited to see how some of this lives up and how some of these other protocols use it, and I'm curious to see if there isn't a shift in some of these bigger narratives in the space. I'm more just an observer in these cycles.
Okay.
Yeah, same goes here. Like I kind of agree with Harrison about infrastructure and stuff, but it's also I'm kind of an observer in the market, like the whole crypto aspect of it. As I just observe. It's the tech that like we're here for.
You're not just an observer. You're actually building the infrastructure for this. So you're making a great contribution to this. Doing a great job, I suppose. So yeah, I think that's it, guys. So thank you so much for coming. It's a really pleasure talking to you. I hope Fleek Network will become one of the core players in the infrastructure space. So yeah, I wish you all the best, guys.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, this was great. We got a lot of exciting stuff coming out in the next few months. So yeah, hopefully we could show a lot more that impresses a lot more people by then. But yeah, thank you very much.